The Gloom of Blackwood Manor. Chapter 1. The Inheritance. The letter arrived on a desolate Tuesday, sealed with a thick wax crest bearing the image of a fractured raven. It informed Elias Thorne, a mundane bookbinder living in the city, that he had inherited Blackwood Manor, a property he never knew existed, from a distant, recently deceased relative. The fine print mentioned a mandatory 6-month residency clause to officially take possession. Elias, seeking an escape from his tedious life, accepted. He ignored the whispers and the grim warnings he read in century-old town archives, tales of strange lights, disappearing caretakers, and the manor's infamous silence. Chapter 2. Arrival and Atmosphere. He arrived at dusk. Blackwood Manor stood atop a shallow rise, a gothic monolith of black granite, choked by ivy. The air was unnaturally still, heavy with the scent of damp earth and something indefinably metallic. The moment Elias stepped across the threshold, the silence inside was absolute, a palpable weight that pressed against his eardrums. The house was cold, despite the late summer date. Dust lay everywhere, thick and undisturbed, yet in the main hall, a single grandfather clock stood polished and ticking with an irregular, labored rhythm. Thump, click, thump, click. That night, Elias tried to sleep in the master bedroom. He was awoken, not by noise, but by a sudden, intense drop in temperature. He saw nothing but felt a presence, something cold, vast and sorrowful, standing just outside the cone of light cast by his bedside lamp. When he spoke, the air around him seemed to absorb the sound, leaving only a dry click in his throat. Chapter 3. The Library and the Ledger. The following days were spent exploring. The library was the heart of the house, a towering chamber filled with volumes bound in deteriorating leather. Hidden behind a sliding bookshelf, Elias discovered a small locked iron door. Inside, he found a single object, a journal of accounts, bound in stitched human skin, detailing not financial transactions but rituals. The entries were dated from the 1890s, written in a spidery, frantic hand belonging to his ancestor Elias Thorne. Silas was a mad occultist who believed the manor sat on a thin place, a nexus point where the boundary between worlds frayed. The final terrifying entry was dated June 12, 1898. The cost is paid. It walks among the trees now. No, not it, we. The gloom is perfect. I have found my true silence. Chapter 4. The Unseen Watcher. Elias began to notice unsettling phenomena. Objects would move slightly, a chair turned fractionally towards the window, a book closed and placed on the floor, always just outside his direct line of sight. The worst was the mirrors. Every piece of polished glass in the house, including the surface of his coffee, reflected his image with a noticeable, paralyzing delay. One evening, looking into a hallway mirror, he saw his reflection turn its head before he did, staring back into the dark corridor behind him, with an expression of pure frozen terror. When he finally turned, nothing was there but the cold, empty wall. He knew he was being watched, not by a ghost but by the manor itself, or the gloom Silas had invoked. Chapter 5. The Cellar and the Silence. Driven by a desperate need for answers, Elias found the entrance to the wine cellar, concealed beneath a loose flagstone in the kitchen. The cellar was vast, circular and empty, save for a central stone pedestal. Etched into the pedestal was a complex, interlocking geometric symbol. As Elias touched the cold stone, a whisper, faint yet deafening, filled the space. It wasn't a language he knew, but he understood the essence: loneliness, hunger, and cold. He realized the house was not haunted by a spirit, but was a vessel for an ancient, malignant form of existence, the gloom, which fed on the essence of sound and warmth, drawing all sensory input into a vacuum. Silas had used the land and the house to bind it, and Elias's 6-month occupancy was the final requirement for the gloom's complete re-entry into the world. Chapter 6. The Inevitable End. Elias ran upstairs to leave, but the front door, which had always opened easily, was now fused shut. He was trapped. In the master bedroom, the grandfather clock in the hall began to strike midnight, its rhythmic thump-click accelerating into a terrifying continuous rush of noise. The sound was so intense it felt like a physical pressure crushing his chest. The moment the final chime rang, the sound abruptly ceased. Everything went silent. But this was a different silence. It was the perfect silence Silas had written about. It was the total absence of sensation, a vacuum that swallowed all light, heat and life. Elias felt his own voice, his heartbeat, his very consciousness being drawn out of him, pulled into the granite walls. He was no longer alone. The gloom was everywhere now. It wasn't a shape or a form, it was the pure sensation of cosmic dread. The final image in Elias's mind before the darkness consumed him was the grandfather clock, its pendulum frozen, its surface reflecting a momentary, terrifyingly clear image, not his face, but the face of Silas Thorne, smiling into the ultimate silence. The house settled back into its absolute quiet, waiting patiently for the next unwary inheritor to satisfy the requirements of the long-forgotten fractured raven.